Okay, in what way did your previous knowledge and or experiences influence your perspective on issues raised by this documentary film? So I was in deaf studies and ASL, but in deaf studies we learned a lot about more of the deaf perspective rather than like the medical perspective. So we actually watched this movie in that class and we're talking about kind of, I feel like I have more perspective of Heather's family, like understanding why they are that way, not necessarily saying that like I would agree with that, but I can definitely like see their point of view because we discussed that a lot in deaf studies and talked about deaf culture and just like how important like ASL is to them and how their deaf identity like really is important to them.
I didn't take ASL and I took Spanish instead, and so I was like kind of shocked by just like the really big difference between just like how close deaf culture is and like how big of a deal it was for like a deaf family to have a hearing child. And so it was like kind of shocking, like having no experience with ASL, and so, but it was really cool to kind of like have more insight after watching it, I guess.
Yeah, I could totally see how that would be your response, because even in ASL when we talked about it, I was shocked too.
So
Yeah.
I did this. I took ASL and I was still like, oh shoot, I had no idea.
Yeah.
So.
And I guess it kind of makes sense because they are like such a smaller group, like they're the minority. They want to like kind of stick together, and like, so I guess it kind of makes sense that they put so much emphasis on their culture. They're so proud.
Yeah.
Anything else, guys? Okay, so how would you characterize the Artinian family in general? The family dynamics. I thought they were pretty open and honest with each other, and if they like disagreed, they definitely like spoke up and shared their opinion. And I thought they were pretty good at listening to each other. Even if they did like not agree, they like still gave them the opportunity to like say what they feel. But it definitely caused a lot of fighting and a lot of issues, which was really hard to watch.
I think like I could definitely see like the deaf culture in them because deaf people are very blunt and they like say exactly what they mean. So like it was very like obvious what everyone like thought, but like even the mom who was hearing, who like the grandma, she was outspoken too, and she's not deaf, so that just could be in the genes.
Also interesting though, despite their differences and their disagreements, they seemed like a very like family knit environment. They were very, we do things together, we hang out together, we, I don't know.
Cause that was like their community, and like a lot of families, like your grandma or your aunts and uncles wouldn't have like as much input on like big decisions like that, and it was like they were like consulting with each other about all of that.
And they just leaving. They left and went to Maryland. Yeah, and then 3 years later decided to come back only because they missed the family. So crazy.
In what ways can you personally identify with Heather's parents? What similar or relatable experiences have you had or have you witnessed that can allow you to empathize with Heather's parents? I think for me, Heather's parents were probably the hardest to identify with, just because they did seem very stuck in their ways and stuck in their culture. But then I also have to think, okay, what in my own life would I be like stuck on, or would it be hard to get past it? Because it almost seemed like Heather's dad was so hurt by hearing people, that he was so anti-hearing people, that, I mean, it makes sense. If someone's hurt you, you're going to flash back. Yeah, so that's kind of how I would identify with them. But I would say it's hard because they were so pushed back from others' opinions and kind of stayed within their own beliefs that it was hard to relate.
Well, and like they didn't even really want to listen that, or they didn't take that much weight with hearing people's opinions, and like even their own family, they were like, well, you're here and you don't understand, like you can't identify with this issue. And so that made me kind of think like, well, so like, maybe I really don't identify exactly how you're feeling because I don't know how you feel and like your experiences, so.
I think my family would be more like Heather's parents. Like, they would want what was best for me, and so they would explore the options, kind of like her mom did, but in the long run, if they had to decide between like keeping their family really close knit and letting their kids kind of like do their own thing, my parents would tend to be more like, okay, we're gonna keep it all together, because I think that's security for her parents of like, okay, there's all 5 of us, and it's not just me and you now, it's like us and the kids. And so that was something unique too, that I was like, my parents might be kind of the same way if they were in that situation. But
So, in what ways can you personally identify with baby Peter's parents? What similar or relatable experiences have you had or have you witnessed that can allow you to empathize with Peter's parents? So, I don't know, I felt like it was really hard to watch Peter's parents because it was like they were getting a lot of like backlash from their like deaf side of the family and like the deaf community, but they also wanted the best, or what they thought was the best for their child. And I feel like that would probably be more what my parents would do, because like, I mean, we've never done anything that similar to that, but I mean, like, a long time ago we moved from Minnesota down to Texas, and like that was a big thing for my family all up in Minnesota, and they got like a lot of backlash for that, but they were like, no, this is the best thing for us to move down here. And so I feel like it was kind of a similar thought process, at least, and it was like really hard for them to make it, but
I think it's hard for me to kind of relate to either family, honestly, because I think both of them, honestly, like, I don't want this to sound like terrible to the parents, but I feel like both parents were being like slightly selfish in their own ways, because they just want their kid to be just like them, where the hearing parents want their baby to be their deaf baby to be hearing, and the deaf parents want their children to be deaf. And like neither of them I think they need to take into account Heather wanted, she made the choice and she wanted it, but she had already had like language skills to back it up, so she could do sign and be able to speak. But then the other family, they didn't wait long enough and give the child the option, especially when they had so many resources like for sign language around them. It's not like we can't learn sign language, they already knew it, and they're not going to teach their child that. So I think I can't relate to either of them, because I think that there should definitely have been more thinking about the children and both sides of that argument.
I think it's hard though when they do in the video, when they did the cochlear implant surgery on Peter, her like his grandmother, so her mom was crying and was so upset and was like, why would you do this
like,
to your child? Like, you hurt me. Yeah, like this kid's gonna make fun of me and hate me. And I was like, wow, that's such a violent reaction. And so how hard that, like, to empathize with that would be like, oh my gosh, how hard would it have been for your mom to be like crying because of a decision you made. Like, for me that would be so hard, because like, I mean, I want to please my parents, you know. It's crazy.
Okay, what was your impression of the professionals shown in the film? All of the, like the SLPs, audiologists, teachers, I think they were all pretty, I guess, like the teachers at the speaking school were very intent on only speaking, and they were very, I don't know the word for it, but like good at their specific job. And so it was cool to see kind of how, I mean, Heather's parents went to kind of a bunch of different groups and to see the different ways that they interact with the different kind of kids. And they were all super supportive of the individual kids and whatever they wanted, but the audiologist, I don't know, they all seemed kind of for the cochlear implants indirectly, even like with the certain activities that they did at the end with the SLPs. And the audiologist, she made sure that she really explained things really well. I feel like she did a good job of that, and was really excited for Peter whenever they first did the hearing stuff. Was really supportive and kind of showed the parents how they should react to things, which was cool.
And it was also cool, like, in the deaf education school that Heather was in Maryland, like, they showed her going to speech still, like, in the school. So they were still, like, working on speech, even though all the kids were signing, and it's, like, a really big deaf community. So.
And I thought they were all pretty, like, honest. I don't think the audiologist or speech pathologist were, like, sugarcoating anything. Like, remember when the mom's like, I kind of want to hear too of my, daughter, and they're like, it's not gonna be as easy for you. So I thought they were pretty honest with the parents.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that.
And nice that they referred them to people
Yeah.
to talk to and families that had kids with
Yeah. I think it's important that they had that they showed them families of cochlear implants of deaf and hearing families, and that the deaf families were happy with their child who could hear as well.
Yeah.
So that made me I don't understand, if they can be happy, why can't you?
Yeah.
That girl, she obviously, one of the arguments, sorry, I'm going off topic, it doesn't matter, but okay, I'll say it. The girl, the dad made this argument for the girl where it's well, her speech wasn't very good with it. But did you see how happy the girl was?
Yeah.
She was happy to have, she was confident.
And she felt like she could communicate better.
And it's it doesn't matter if her speech doesn't sound good. If you're worried about her being made fun of, she could get made fun of being a deaf signer as well. If your child is happy being both, then you should let her.
The deaf community isn't going to really focus on how bad their speech is. So,
Right.
it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
If it gives them the confidence and then their speech is still bad,
Right.
I don't know. I don't see the harm in it. But.
Okay, what insight did this video give you into oral and manual communication methodologies? I don't know. I guess it just kind of shows how intricate that sign is, and how it's you can tell that it's obviously a real language, but then you're able to grow up with both with the cochlear implant. You can learn orally and through sign language. So
I think it's interesting because it was done in 2000. So, and cochlear implants were newer, and that's why it was so debated. But with the communication methodologies, it seemed like there wasn't as much of a push as there is now towards picking which one you want. It's kind of you pick one, you stick with it. That's what it is. Yeah. And so that was interesting to see, instead of nowadays where it's more flexible of you can choose auditory or auditory verbal. Yeah. Exactly.
Well, even with Heather, getting the cochlear implant, they were talking about make sure that she's exposed to a lot of sounds and speech, which made me think that's gonna be really hard for her growing up with a completely deaf family. She's not gonna have that much access to it, and that's when I kind of understood that would be really hard on the parents to not give that to her. And so, but also they took so much pride in the manual communication and just their language. They were well, it's so much better. You can show so much more emotion.
Yeah.
And
he said something speech is just moving the lips.
Yeah.
You just move your lips.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
And so that was interesting because we prefer ours because it's all we know, but they prefer theirs because that's all they know. So.
Okay, what insights did the film give you into deaf culture? Were you surprised by anything? I was definitely shocked the most with the picnic thing, the outdoor thing.
Yes.
I had zero clue that was coming. They hated it. They hated cochlear implants so much. And there was just no okay, we get it, like, okay, I'm hearing you, Peter's parents, I forgot their names, but they're like, okay, that makes kind of sense. They just, like, snapped and attacked,
Yeah,
They are bold, so it's kind of like, I knew they were going to be bold, but I didn't know it was going to be just like that. But they're such a tight-knit group, and they took so much pride in their culture. They're like, didn't even think about merging any.
Yeah.
There's no, like, we can coexist.
But it was kind of sad too because his parents are hearing, and so like that's kind of the culture that he would be brought up in, and they were so hurt that like the movie said, like they were taking a member of their society like away from them, but like his parents are hearing, so like,
and he seemed very anti-hearing.
He did.
Which was very interesting. And, like, even at the picnic and stuff, they were generally anti-hearing. It seemed like they had some previous experiences growing up in the deaf community that scarred them all.
Yeah.
So, therefore, there was very little grace in the sense of...
Like, the thing is, like, so when you say, like, they grew up in the deaf community, most of them didn't grow up in the deaf community. They grew up in these hearing communities where they were outcasts. So this deaf community is where they came... Like what we learned in like deaf studies is that like they typically you find this deaf community in college unless you grew up in a deaf family, and so it's like when you go to college and you see okay other people signed and I can like communicate with people, it's just like it's like a sigh of relief, like oh my gosh these people know me, they can understand me, and so I think like it's just so important to them, especially just like how tight knit it is, and then like they're also just a very like it's not like individualistic is us, so they're like communal, I guess, and very like every decision affects the entire community. So it's like when you implant your kid, it's not like you're just like affecting your family and your child. It's like that reflects on the entire deaf community, and they're like, you're gonna make us look bad. You're gonna make it look like deaf is bad.
Yeah.
And so like that's like
you said, you think deaf is inferior to hearing.
Yeah. And it like they think that it reflects on the entire community, so that's why they all put their say in rather than no, it's this is my family thing. It's like no, it's not your family thing. It's all of our thing.
What kind of emotional response did you have to this program? I personally was frustrated. I think it's hard watching conflict in general, so that was just frustrating. But frustration would be my main emotion.
Frustration or anger at the family. It's just
kind of both of them. I was like, wow, there's like a lot of tension, and just everyone got like so worked up about like these conversations that they were having. And I was like, just cool down, like. But at the same time, I also just felt really sad for them. Like that is a really big decision that they're making, and they did have like they were being pulled a lot of different ways. So it was like. I also just felt really bad for them. I was like, that is really hard at the same time.
Yeah. I felt bad for the mom. She was struggling.
Oh. Well, both moms.
Both moms, that's true.
All the moms.
All the moms.
All the moms. Because they just want to do good for their kids, and so many other people are telling them, like, all these different things. They're getting swayed each different way.
I was really confused. I was like, I mean, I know it's 2016 and not 2000 anymore, so people are more like accepting of everyone. But in my head, I was like, why can't you just do both?
Yeah,
like,
exactly what I was thinking.
Why does a cochlear implant have to like yank them from the deaf community? Like, why can't she have why can't Heather have a cochlear implant and still live in her deaf family and still be a part of that? But then also get to go to school and be in the hearing community. I was just
especially like as Heather already was fluent in sign language.
Right.
So there's nothing preventing her. Like the other family, the baby, it's like he probably will never.
Yeah. So just very confused.
Or 9.
Some of the deaf members of the family expressed concern that the cochlear implants would eventually make deafness extinct. Do you think this is a real danger for the future? I mean, I feel like not the immediate future, but like generations down the line, if like everyone starts giving their babies cochlear implants and then like that passes down to like the babies with the cochlear implants children's and like stuff like that, I feel like less and less people are gonna be brought up in the deaf culture because like babies getting cochlear implants may not ever learn ASL because they can hear and they're brought up in hearing culture. So I feel like that was a valid concern like for far down the line.
And if it's not like totally gone, it's gonna be so different than it is.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. I hope it's never like gone.
Right. That would be really sad.
Yeah.
But
It's
I mean,
gonna look so
even
different.
now, from when the movie was made, I feel like it's definitely different.
Yeah.
I feel like there's always going to be those people who are like, no, we want sign. You know,
Yeah.
There's always going to be that community
Yeah.
there that's like, we're so against
That's
it.
true.
So,
Because there's like families like that have like generations of deaf people.
Right.
yeah.
And people, I mean, deafness will still be
Prevalent.
an issue and prevalent. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's not like the problem is going away.
Right.
Alright, everybody good to do sensory
6
recall?
years later.
6 or 6?
Okay, what factors seemed the most important to Heather's parents in their decisions from the later film about cochlear implantation, communication modes, and their children's education? I don't know. I feel like from the beginning, Heather's mom was always really on board with cochlear implants. I feel like she was always kind of really confused or like really curious about it. And so I think maybe that was something that was deep down always a wonder of theirs. And so maybe eventually after seeing their cousin, Peter, get the cochlear implant and grow up a little bit and see the effect of that on their family, maybe that was like the pushing factor. But I feel like, I mean, the mom eventually got it way later, and so
Everyone,
everyone
the
did.
dad got him.
Yeah, like all of a sudden, all of them had cochlear implants. I was like, "Whoa, where'd it come from?"
I think what their main concern was just like deaf culture and like our identity is being deaf, and like we want to pass that along to our children. And so like originally that was like their main concern, and they were just scared that that identity was gonna get taken away. But I think like as like she said, she was like, well, cochlear implants were really new and kind of experimental, and we just didn't know that much. But now that, you know, it's years later, it's a little bit more acceptable, and like we realize that she can have both. So
I feel like education was a big part of that too, because I feel like they brought up a lot throughout the video of they would be behind figuring culture. Like a lot of people graduate on the 4th grade reading level, and so I think that was a big concern probably for them. They wanted them to be on the same level as everybody else and be able to do things the same way. So that might have eventually been like the push.
Yeah. Also, they said they were sitting around the table, and the mom attributed their getting cochlear implants to the grandma.
Oh yeah.
And so I think family in the end, because they moved away and then came back because of family. And so I think like a big factor for them was seeking the grandparents' approval in the sense of they're really asking for this. At this point, why fight it?
because they were living with them and everything, they kind of needed the grandparents at that time. So
did the grandpa say like, since you're like living with us, we're kind of taking care of you, we really are pushing this, like, didn't he say that right, or something like that?
No, yeah, he did.
Okay.
He didn't give an ultimatum, but it seemed like there was an ultimatum-ish. Yeah.
Is my turn? Yeah. Okay. How did watching the follow-up film influence your opinions, particularly the ones expressed in questions 6, 7, and 8? Or 6, 7, and 8. Emotional, insight, into deaf culture. I don't really know. How did watching the follow-up influence your opinions?
So, for like deaf culture, I think it just like showed a little bit how much it can change in even like 6 years. It seemed like at least their family kind of had like a much better awareness of, oh, we see the benefits of hearing, but like we also have this deaf culture identity, and we can have both. So like, and it seems like just from class and stuff, that's kind of what we've learned a little bit about deaf culture is like we accept, you know, hearing impaired, cochlear implants, deaf. It seems a little bit more inclusive and not like you are deaf and like that's who you are and that's your only way of communication. So.
And it really did seem to benefit Heather, like seeing her like on the volleyball team and with all her friends at like dinner, and she was just really communicating really well with them, even though she was older and had it done. I don't know, I liked how we could see the benefits of having a cochlear implant.
Yes, absolutely. And it seemed like the oral and manual communication methodologies, like that had evolved with time, like it's been evolving. There were more, the family, everyone was more open to all types of, and you could even see her doing speech therapy with the screen and that kind of stuff. So just seeing that incorporated was neat.
Okay, any other thoughts or comments that we had about the film? One thing that I was really saddened by was the fact that little friend of Heather's who was deaf and had a cochlear implant, and she knew, like, and even the parents didn't know anything about like the deaf culture.
Shelby, I think. Or
Yeah,
something? At the very beginning.
at the very beginning.
Yeah.
And I was watching that, and that kind of made me sad. The mom was so disappointed, and I was kind of like, that is actually really sad. Like, she has no clue about this whole other side that she like was born into. And I don't know, I was kind of like, if I, you know, ever have a deaf kid and whatever happens, I'm gonna like include the deaf culture into her life because
she is deaf no matter what happens. She takes it off, and you want to give her that option to like experience that. But the thing is like we learned this. Sorry, I keep saying this, but in deaf studies, like a lot of times, hearing parents do not get the resources to even know that the deaf, like immediately, like as soon as like they do that hearing screening as like a baby, and they're like, your child's deaf. Like here is how like these are your options are, you know, cochlear implants, and like a lot of like the medical like view is like that is like the best option, and so it's like there's a medical view and then there's like the deaf perspective, and it's like both are right, but like the people who have deaf children, like hearing people who have deaf children, need to be able to see both sides of that and talk to people with cochlear implants and talk to deaf people who have grown up deaf, especially like with hearing parents, and like how that can.
Well, and it's interesting because even when we talked about in class about how she, like, Dr. Drew was saying she doesn't tell people that they're deaf, it's, oh, you have a profound hearing loss. So it's not even associating deafness with the hearing loss. You know, so hearing parents might not even have a clue. I mean, they can assume, but that it should even be a culture worth pursuing.
Yeah, well, and they may not even know that it necessarily exists. Like, if I wasn't speech path and like learned about this stuff, you don't really encounter it that much unless you know people, or but like in my life I would have no idea that like there was this tight knit culture around it. So it's just like they may not even be informed that it's such a big deal.
It makes me wonder, like, as a parent, I'm like, okay, do you wait a little bit and give them time to develop language through sign and then do the cochlear implant, even though there's a better chance of them like not being able to hear as well? But then it would be like, okay, I'm not fluent in sign, and so that
you would
time,
have to learn it too.
that time period of them like not having anything, like they would lose language, they would lose all this stuff, and so
it's a hard
how do you go about it?
Yeah.
I don't know what the best thing would be. It's hard. Anything else?